Baie dankie Jennifer vir die markte. Iemand wat definitief al die markte dopgehou het in sy lewe. Adam Kethro, ons gesels vanoggend met hom. Hy is 'n besigheidsmagnaat. Dit was nou baie interessant om 'n bietjie navorsing te doen, maar op die ouderdom van 66 sy eerste roman te skryf, Pleasures of the Harbour, hierdie boek. Baie lekker. So Adam, a big welcome.
No, thank you very much for having me on your show.
No, it's lovely. And I must say, you look like a skipper. You love boats.
You know, if you look at the first fly page of my book, it says the chap was a captain by any captain. So I hope I'm a captain by any captain.
Definitely. Let's start at the beginning. We're going to get to the book, but I just want to let people know you a bit more. So, born in KwaZulu-Natal, just tell me a bit about your upbringing.
I was born in KwaZulu-Natal. I went to nursery school in Durban, and then I went to primary school in Welkom, in the Orange Free State, in St. Helena Primary, which was dual medium. It was like a horse and rabbit pie, one horse, one rabbit, and the English was a rabbit. And as you know, St. Helena is named after the island where the Boer prisoners were in the Tweede Vryheidsoorlog. So it was a nice, tough upbringing. I was taught a little bit about fighting, and then I moved to Brakpan, where I had to deal with the ducktails, and then down to Durban, where I became a stoker in the railways, which is a story in and of itself, and then the army, and then the shipping business,
So what I pick up, you were not a trust baby, you know?
I was not,
you know, like in Afrikaans, a trust baba. You were not born into this, because we're going to get to your business that you built, and I want people to stay curious. Bridge Shipping, it's the biggest logistics company in South Africa. So well done for coming from Welkom, doing that. No, I'm joking, I also stayed in Welkom when I was 5. And then after school, your army days?
I went to the Bereerde Centrum in Potchefstroom, and I was very privileged to work with a great African, a man called Major H.P.E.X. Stark. He was South African dressage champion. He was head game warden of Etosha. There's a book written about him called The White Bushman. He was a man of Africa, and he passed away recently, and a big tree fell in Africa the day he died. He was a hell of a man.
Mm. And then the seed of doing business. When did you first realize you want to start being an entrepreneur? Were you born an entrepreneur? I mean, you started writing, I think your first essay was published in a school paper in Standard 8. So that balance, okay, we're going to get to the book, but first a bit about the business. That thing of going, I'm going to do a startup.
Let ek bietjie verduidelik. I wasn't a good student at school. My parents were very worried. They sent me on aptitude tests, and I failed the aptitude tests. The one thing they said I could maybe do is write. And that stuck in my head. I failed my matric. I wrote it a second time. I went from an E- to an E+. And then I went to the army. But, I've always been a student. I read a lot of books all my life. And I was a quasi-intellectual as a teenager before the army made a man of me. And I realized that most writers, like musicians and artists, they battle financially. So I thought, no, better to go into business and eventually have my own business so that I could afford to write, that I wasn't starving,
That's very clever. I wish I could do that. So, Adam...
You can.
I'm on my way. Never too late to start. So, Adam, we're going to talk about economics a bit later in the second segment, but how difficult was your startup? And what was the breakthrough? And especially, I mean, going from starting with a small business and going into shipping, and it was also a very difficult time in South Africa with sanctions and all the stuff.
Yes, I started when I was 23 in 1980, and I just want to say, if you want to start a business, 23 is a very good time, because you've done your 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, and you're brave. Soldiers are young, not old. I think people who start businesses at the age of 35 with a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage and a car, they're the brave people. But it was a closed market, South Africa, in those days. There were sanctions, and there were about 5 large companies that really ruled South Africa. There was the Durban Club, where it didn't allow women, didn't allow Jews, didn't allow people of color. It was a closed market. There were old Durban families and old Natal families. And to start a business was very tough. I remember going to see one of the people I'd worked with in the past when I was employed, said, look, I started my business, could you give me some business? And they said, if we do and you go bankrupt, you're going to be embarrassed. So sorry, we can't help you. I said, well, everybody takes that attitude, then I'm going to go bankrupt.
And we're going to get to that. Someone building a business, and when you left or retired, we're going to talk about the farming with bridge shipping. You left behind 45 millionaires. So that business concept, I want to find out what motivated you. And then we're going to get to the book. So Adam, just stay tuned. Want jy moet hierdie boek kry, en ek sal 'n bietjie meer uitvind waar dit presies gaan, maar veral as jy van besigheid hou, kry jy die boek, maar ons gesels nou verder. Welkom terug hier by die Groot Ontbyt. Jy net ingeskakel het. Ons gesels met Adam Kethro en op hierdie stadium, ek dink is African Bridge Shipping een van die grootste logistiese maatskappye in Suid-Afrika, of die grootste wat hy gebou het, en hy het 'n boek geskryf en dis so 'n bietjie biografies en daar's besigheidtips en is baie lekker leesstof. Hy kry baie goeie reviews en het op 66 hierdie boek geskryf. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you very much, Jorne.
And just a little bit more business, then we're going to get to the book. Your first breakthrough when you realize, okay, now I'm not just a startup, I'm not just a normal businessman, this is now a big business. And some of those challenges, because you decided to move into Africa.
Jorne, South Africa was a relatively closed market, and I learned something early on that it's easier to do business where it's hard to do business, and it's harder to do business where it's easier to do business, if that makes sense to you. So the big companies weren't in Mozambique and Zambia and Zimbabwe. This was Mugabe came to power in 1980. This was 1981. Mozambique was run by Frelimo. Malawi, I still had Hastings Banda. But it was there was the civil war with Renamo. It was dangerous times.
And then your business philosophy, because when you basically left and you decided, we're going to quickly talk about the farming part as well. You left behind 45 millionaires underneath you. Was that the way you worked, motivating people, or what was your business philosophy?
I started with 2 people in 1980. I was 23 years old. But as the company grew, you needed other people to help you. You can't do it by yourself. And I had a share incentive trust, and 45 of our staff had shares, and they became all millionaires. When I left, there were 700 staff. Today, the company with the team that I hired now has 2,700 staff. I don't know how many millionaires there are now, but don't forget I retired in 2005.
And then you dabbled in farming, and you said that didn't work for you. So just tell us about the farming experience.
Jorne, I have the greatest respect for every farmer in this country. It is the hardest business in this country. And I've had a lot of businesses. I'm in business today. I have a bit of a banking business and a salvage business. But farming, I owned a farm for 30 years, and I farmed actively for 10 years. It is the hardest business. Every South African farmer should get a knighthood if such a thing existed here. I have the greatest respect. I farmed, and farming, you farm on your own. You just got yourself and your wife. And if you're going the wrong way, no one can tell you because you don't have people to advise you. In a business, if you're going down the wrong road, someone will say, listen, you're making a mistake here, turn around, and which is great. When you're farming, you farm by yourself. Well, you farm by yourself and with God, because if it doesn't rain, you've had it.
And I know you're also involved in one of your companies is a bridging finance company. I'll phone you after the show.
Okay.
Let's get to the book. And
Yes.
You started this book age 61 with one finger.
Yeah.
When did you decide now's the time? This is going to be the first one, and I know there's more in the pipeline. But the process of this book, and it's a bit biographical. I can't say that word in English. Biographies. Yeah. So and then the main character. How much can we see you in the main character?
I wanted to do a business manual. I wanted to do a biography, and I wanted to do a novel. There was a wonderful novel called The Power of One, written by Bryce Courtney, and it had a big impression on me when I was growing up. So what I decided to do a novel which incorporated all 3. So there's a fictional character. His name is Adam Askew. A lot of the stuff is true, and a lot of the stuff is not true. It's a dramatized version of my life and my experiences, and the experiences of my colleagues. And hopefully it's very readable. People say they battle to put it down. Once they picked it up, they can't go to sleep, which I think is the ultimate test of a book, you know.
The most difficult part of writing a book. Did you struggle? What made you struggle a bit?
You know, if you play a certain role in life, you become the actor that you're behaving. So I was acting as a businessman for 40 years. When I came to write, I knew how to write a memo with bullet points. And I also knew how to record my experiences, but I didn't know how to write a novel. So I got hold of a company called All About Writing. A friend of mine put me onto them, and they guided me to put a central string, a sort of skeleton, so to speak, and to give the book the best storytelling ability.
And was there parts of the book that really took you back in your life story, that you maybe went from memoirs and remember something you've forgotten for years? What was a special or emotional thing for you writing this book?
A lot of the book was emotional. The book took me 2.5 years to write, and sometimes I had to put it down because, you know, you get nostalgia and kuier of what you did, and it's quite difficult to put one specific thing. I suppose the most important was the day I arrived in Beira, which was 5 months after I started business. And I looked out the window, and there were puffs of smoke. I thought they were burning veld fires. And I said to the hostess, or the steward in those days, I said, "What's that?" He said, "No, those are MiGs strafing Renamo positions, just close to the airport." And I landed, there were these MiGs with the cut-off noses that you used to see in the Korean War comics. And then I got a taxi, it was a tired red Peugeot 504. And as we came into the little town of Beira, there was a slogan hung between 2 lampposts. And it said, "Resiste do Africa do Sul." And I realized that was me. It's quite a lonely feeling. First time in Beira, first time in that situation. But listen, it was like walking into the past. There were people there dressed in suits with no business, but they came to work every day. There were typewriters that just stood idle. It was something different. And I hopefully the reader will travel to that part of the world and that time in the second half of the 20th century, because it was a different world to the world we live in today.
And that's what I found fascinating about the book, because it takes you a bit through the army, and it takes you through how South Africa was and Africa was, and even some moments on page 255. Adam Kethro said, "I wasn't a religious man," and now all of a sudden you realize that I've got everything, and this verse came to you. What should it profit a man that he gain the world yet lose his soul? So there's really some emotional and life lessons. And I think that's why people must really get this book. But something like that, having wealth but not being a happy person. Do you think it happens a lot?
I unfortunately am one of those people that I jump into a swimming pool in the deep end, and then I swim to the shallow end. By the time I get to the shallow end, I'm happy. Then I jump into another swimming pool that's another deep end. So life is, just an accumulation of experiences. And once you've achieved what you want, then at least you then go into the next stage. I will say this. People who say money can't bring happiness never got divorced.
It definitely brings less stress. One of your quotes is, we are each responsible for the quality of our own lives. That's one of the things you lived by. Do you use it to motivate people, and just talk about it a bit?
My late father was a psychiatrist, and he said to me, "You can only help people who want to be helped, and every person is responsible for the quality of their own lives." And I find that, if you rely on yourself to get yourself to where you want to go to, that's much better than relying on other people and philosophies. You have to get down and do it. And the lovely Afrikaans expression is "kyk noord en gaan voort." And that's part of that. You're responsible for the quality of your own life.
It's great that you had the responsibility to use that quote very balanced. So Adam, after this book, having Adam Kethro and then also Adam Askew, the next book, is it away from yourself? Just give us a bit of what you're working on.
So this is the middle book from my life from 17 to 50. The first book is my life from 7 to 17, growing up in Welkom and Brakpan and working as a stoker on the railways. Incidentally, you know, in Afrikaans, it's a stoker. The English word that they used was a fireman. I thought I was a fireman with a red hat and a purple-mounted plume. I could net 'n voorschool and I could gaan stook. And the last book is the book which I call The Green Drought, which was my story as a farmer toe ek so 'n bietjie uitgeboer was.
I can't wait for those books. Adam, thank you so much for this book. And I think the business that you built and the way you've done it, I think you've got a fantastic life. It was hard work. I wanted some business advice for guys in 2022, but we don't have time for that, so I'll just WhatsApp you for some help. So enjoy your weekend.
Renee, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your show. The book is available in all good bookstores and online from Take-A-Lot and Amazon and Loot, and can be downloaded from Kindle. And thank you for giving me an airing.
Yep, it was my pleasure. Thank you, Adam. Dis Adam Kethro geweest, Pleasures of the Harbour. Maar gaan Google hom ook en gaan kyk bietjie wat hy als gebou het.